There we go. I got nervous for a second. I was like, oh
There
gosh,
you go. How are you?
doing fine.
Great. Well, I think, yes, we're recording. So let's get started. Um, I am so excited today. I mean, just probably one of the best interviews that I've ever looked forward to. And I truly mean that is now I can actually call her my good friend, Annie Jones. And Annie,
Oh,
thank you so much for joining me. We have been chatting for such a long time. It's been pretty much over instant messenger, I guess if you call it Facebook Messenger. And we
yes.
have chatted about pretty much everything in the last maybe 6 months or so. I was trying to scroll back our first set of messages, and it was at least 6 months ago. So thank you today
Wow.
for. I know I was looking through the dates and I was like, oh my gosh, we've been chatting for over 6 months. So I have a couple of those excerpts pulled up as well. But
Oh my
thank you
God.
so much for joining today. I cannot wait to get this interview started and really listen to Annie's story and how she has completely turned her health around simply by just doing a few things that we, worked on together, including using the patches, the phototherapy patches. And so we're going to talk about this story today, but this is a must listen to. I've talked about my story so many times on this page in different groups and how I was so sick and how I completely turned my life around. But it's so different coming from me as a practitioner to now like a real life example of a patient who has made the same turnaround. And so this is why I really wanted to share your story. And so thank you so much for coming on board today. So
I'm
the first
absolutely
question,
honored.
oh, thank you. So the first question I always like to start with is before any of us had this chronic illness, we were someone completely different. We were this vibrant, healthy, just full of life kind of person before this any kind of chronic illness defined us. So tell us a little bit more about who you were and who the person you were before all of this.
Well, I certainly was very healthy and I was an athlete. I loved to work out. I was a runner, competitive runner. I was a full-time bike commuter. I swam distances. I just any yoga, anything. I just loved it. That was my meditation,
Right.
exercise, being at the
Right.
gym. Um, but I can say for probably the 15, 20 years leading up to my illness, I was really not taking care of myself. And it was a perfect storm of extreme stress and losses. And my parents had passed away by the time I was 29 and 31, respectively. And that was extremely
Wow.
devastating to me. And then I went through two highly dysfunctional marriages and then divorces each time. I was a single mother and teaching. And then a new principal came in and she fired everybody who was new. So lost my job, which, I was a paycheck away from, losing my home, losing everything. And I ended up moving in with a friend and working out of town and was separated from my children for a while. And I mean, just
Oh,
extremely painful time. But
sure.
I fortunately was able to sell a piece of property. I got back into my home, got back with my children, and met my husband, who is a saint. So everything turned around. I got safe. But
Mhm.
ironically, when life got safe, that's when my health began to absolutely spiral. All that stress, all that extreme, high cortisol lifestyle, it caught up with me. I was
Sure.
still,
In the functional medicine world, we call that allostatic load. And so
oh,
your
really?
body just keeps taking, whether it's toxins, if you're an alcoholic, whether it's a high stress lifestyle, whatever it is, it's called the allostatic load, where your body continues to fight this until it shuts down. And whether in some cases people say, I completely stopped drinking and then I got sick, or I completely stopped doing drugs, or in your case, like you finally got safe and your body
Yeah.
said, all right, now we're done. Now we're shutting down because we have held you up for way too long.
So I'm in this beautiful new marriage. We're traveling. My monetary situation is wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I went from just mind blowing stress to like no stress, and I guess in a way that my body was like, we don't compute. This doesn't make sense. So I started having I would go work out and I'd run 6 or 7 miles, and then I would come home and I would like, I feel really bad. Like my heart was racing. I couldn't sleep at night. And I thought, well, gosh, is this menopause? Is this perimenopause? I didn't know it was this bad. And I started seeing a lot of different practitioners and doctors, and in a very short amount of time, all of a sudden I'm polydrugged. They had me on Xanax. They had me on a beta blocker to control some of these heart palpitations. I had been taking an antidepressant for years after the death of my parents.
Mhm.
And I just continued to get more and more and more sick. And finally, I told my husband, I need to get off of these medications. And that was the start of the illness really, really kicking into high gear. I withdrew from Xanax, which was
Oh,
torture, torture. And
right.
I'd only been on it a few, like maybe 3 or 4 months at the teeny tiny dose, but it was still torture.
Wow.
Then got off the beta blocker. Once again, that was awful. And then I was like, well, the last to go is antidepressant, and that one, thank goodness, is not habit forming.
Mhm.
I quit that cold turkey without knowing how dangerous that is. So I've withdrawn from several drugs. I'm knee deep in adrenal fatigue. I don't know what adrenal fatigue is at that time.
Sure.
And then I've just decided to quit a medication I took for 15 years, cold turkey, which I had no idea how incredibly dangerous that was.
Yeah.
Um, Within 3 to 5 months, I was so sick I couldn't stand, I couldn't walk, I couldn't. Um, I had severe acid reflux. I was unable to eat. I was having panic attacks, dizziness, suicidal ideation, and it just wouldn't
Because your
quit.
body got used to all of those medications. They were basically just like a band-aid. And then
Yeah.
when everything comes crashing down, your body said, well, we can't do without it.
Yeah. And when you're giving your body serotonin regularly like that, what happens
Hmm.
is the body being a system of energy, it stops producing as much serotonin because it doesn't
Sure.
need to anymore. And then
Right.
it pares down neuroreceptor sites because it doesn't, you don't want to flood the body with so
Right.
much serotonin. So all of a sudden I don't have serotonin, and I also don't have the right receptors. And it's just it's a disastrous situation. And then I joined a SSRI group for withdrawal, and they said it would be extremely dangerous for you just to jump back on it. It could be just as bad going back because you've been off for about 5 months now.
Right.
I
Right.
was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And,
Right.
try this out. And I did the best I could. One big problem was that I was so sensitive to medications. I developed in supplements. And so doctors were not helpful, but I began seeing energy workers, anything that didn't involve taking something,
Hmm.
chiropractors, acupuncturists. And I did that for several years until I was 86 pounds.
Jeez.
I was eating 3 foods,
Right.
86 pounds. And I finally was hospitalized. And I remember that day was April 2020. My husband could not come with me to the hospital because it was beginning of COVID. And here I was about as sensitive to anything and everything. And I had to go through testing, and they were giving me bags and bags of vitamins. I was deficient in everything.
Wow.
And then I had a nasal feeding tube inserted, which is torture treatment, medieval torture treatment. And then they put a permanent gastric one,
Wow.
which was a little surgery. And I wore that for 4 months. And finally, miraculously, I thought that was going to be my turning point. So I began healing and I did well. But sadly, last year, I got COVID, had also had 2 vaccines and a booster, and I don't think that helped. And I had really bad reactions to those. But when I got COVID, that kind of sent me backwards. And I really I just lost traction. And once again, I felt like the adrenal fatigue had
Kicked
kicked
in. Absolutely.
in.
Yeah.
And that is, I, probably about at the point where we connected.
Correct. And so just so I can paint the picture, and I have some of the messages, but at that time, when you had reached out, tell us a little bit about your symptoms. You kind of told them to me, but you were pretty much bedridden, needed help walking. You were going to the bathroom and back at best. Like you said, had just gotten off the feeding tube. Tell us a little bit more about the symptoms. You had so much brain fog, if I remember correctly, which was one of the main reasons.
Well, was not quite bedridden by that point, but I was definitely homebound. I'd been bedridden at my worst point when I was
Okay.
hospitalized. My goodness, I couldn't walk up and down stairs but I was definitely homebound. I couldn't try any supplement. Upset me, would cause just crazy anxiety, racing heart. I would be up all night with a racing heart, and just send all of my symptoms through the roof. So I was not tolerating anything. Practitioners didn't know what to do with me because I couldn't tolerate a thing.
Anything. Right.
Nothing, not even really changes in diet. That would kind of send me off the rails too. I just was crashing all the time. I just couldn't get more than a day or two where I felt, kind of like myself, and then something would cause me to crash. And I felt boxed in. I never knew what it was, and that would cause me, like, did I, do too many, like walk 5 minutes? Was that too much? Or was it a new food? Or was it, I never knew. So I was just tense.
You're constantly going through that. And your story
Mhm.
is so similar to most of my patients, where they have a plethora of stuff going on with them, and
Mhm.
sensitivities is one of them. I mean, I was in the same
Gosh.
boat. My husband's like, you're sensitive to everything now. So sensitivities is a big one. If you even walk or exercise, like if I walk the dogs, I'd be, in bed for 2 days because you're all inflamed. And then the same
Mhm.
thing with the brain fog, things like that. I mean, this is such a typical
Yes.
story of every single patient of mine who do not understand what is going on from which direction, and then they question themselves, well, last night I stayed up too late, or last night I walked the dogs too long, or the food I ate. I mean, you're constantly questioning yourself, but really overall it's just your body in this hyper immune, like hyper inflammatory state, just reacting to everything.
Yeah.
And that's a very typical story. And so I remember when you had reached out too in one of our series of text messages, you said you had tried everything possible. Again, sounds very familiar to all the kind of patients I take care of. And it was my story too, that I think I had tried everything under the sun. And I'm, as a functional medicine practitioner, I had access to everything. And same thing, you said you had pretty much tried everything and had basically lost hope at this point of
Oh
what
my
would
God.
work or wouldn't work.
We were buying so many specialty groceries and having them shipped. I was eating duck eggs. I was eating
Yeah.
$300 of like different types of sauerkraut for my gut health. And
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
remember that.
ordering all sorts of stuff. And I had done brain retraining,
Limbic system retraining.
the
Yeah.
limbic system. I'd done the Gupta program. I'd done the, what is it, DNRS, no results, tapping, and some of that would alleviate, it mentally, it would help me, but it really didn't get my
Yeah.
symptoms to turn
It
around.
didn't get to the root cause of the problem. And this is where my focus of my practice in general has always been getting to the root cause, right? And so, same story for me. I was sick for a long time and tried everything under the sun. I saw every subspecialty in allopathic medicine, so like Western medicine, but I had
Yeah.
done every subspecialty in Western medicine as well, or Eastern medicine, I should say, where we had done, from acupuncture to chiropractor to energy healing to craniosacral to you name it, right? We've
Yes.
tried everything.
Yes.
And so all of those things are great. They're a great adjunct to healing. But at the end of the day, what I decided to focus on, and what I've now focused on for years with my patients, is getting to the root cause. Why is your system, your body, in this consistent fight or flight mode that we've got to get to calm down first? Now, the problem is, and this, I always address fight or flight and I address HPA and vagus nerve with my patients. But when you had first reached out, you were uber sensitive to everything. And so when I recommended to start you on these patches, I was already very nervous because, kind of like myself, you were very sensitive to everything. So
Yeah.
we said, we would start with one set of patches. The HPA vagus nerve protocol takes 3 patches. And just for our listeners, what you're listening in, the patches that we're talking about, these are phototherapy patches, no chemicals, no medication, nothing in them. But I patch them on the body based on the Chinese meridians. And so basically, if there's, a gut issue, we do a specific patching. If there's a kidney issue, we do a specific patching. And then so in this case, or in your case, we do, what is called the HPA vagus nerve protocol, which is the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis protocol. And I get that to calm down. And there's only 3 patches involved in that. 1 in the back of the neck, 2 behind each ear, because we're kind of stimulating the vagus nerve to calm down, to take over the autonomic nervous system, to calm this body down from reacting to everything. But the problem was your sensitivities. And so same thing in my case, when I first started, it took me almost 6 months to even tolerate the patches. And when I tell my patients this story, they're kind of shocked, but I mean, it was trial and error and giving up halfway through and then saying, I can't do these patches. They're too strong for me, even though they have nothing in them, no chemicals, nothing goes through your skin. They're just liquid crystal that basically just reflect your own body's light. But that's how sensitive our bodies are and how my
Well,
patients are.
I also think it was not just, it was my toxic load,
Correct.
because as I mentioned before, the body being a system of energy, when it's so taxed to perform just basic functions, certain things fall by the wayside. And I think that my detoxification system was definitely overloaded and it was not able to function as it should because
Right.
everything else was, strained. So I
So
feel
the
like
toxic load is so high.
I feel like my first experience with the patches, I had a massive detox.
Right.
And it scared the living bejesus
Yes.
out of me. It because I felt like I was crashing. It was very
Sure. So you
but
had reached out. So we decided of the 3 patches, we were only going to put 1 at the back of her neck to really just 5 minutes is all we had talked about was 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
And then
Yep.
we were going to try the brain balancing and moving that around the brain a little bit. But I remember within the next 3 to 5 days, you reached out and said it had made you so sick. You had taken 10 steps back. You were so distraught that you thought you had messed your body up more. And if it's
Yep.
okay with you, I'm going to read a text from February 1st where you said, I'm so sick this morning. I'm shaking horribly and my neuropathy is 1,000 times worse, making it impossible for me to walk more than a few paces. Thank goodness my husband is home because I'm unable to do anything but go straight to the bed, to the restroom and back. I'm unsure what to do. I am disappointed and downtrodden right now and bit shocked. I have no clue that a patch with no chemicals would do this to me, and I'm terrified that it may take me a full month to recover from this because that's often the case with me when I crash. Maybe once when I'm a little better, I will try again. And that was your first.
So pitiful.
I get choked up because that was your first response to the
I'm a black belt 5th degree for whining. I do.
No, but I mean, you put it so eloquently, and I think part of it because you're a great writer, but you put this eloquently. This is exactly what happened to me, and this happened for at least 2-3 months. But the difference is, I didn't unfortunately have anyone kind of hand holding me through this process and saying, and we stopped for a while. And then a month later, you kind of tried again and you had the same reaction again. You were
I
crashed again. And this time we had only tried, I want to say maybe 5 minutes again, but we had tried it in different positions around the brain. And again, you had crashed. And again, I think at that point was the point that you decided, you know what, these patches are not for me. I'm giving up. I can't do it anymore. And not just about the patches, you had tried everything pretty much under the sun at that point.
I think that I had tried so many things. I was in a vicious cycle of just nothing works for me. I
Right.
couldn't really envision anything. I really had become so incredibly depressed. Even though I continued to try and try and try, I really honestly didn't believe or see that things could turn around.
Right.
Um, Being sick for 7 years, at the beginning of it, I was like, I got this, I can turn this around. I'm gonna, but after, so many years and
Failure
years,
after failure. Yes.
woo, my
And that's
resilience
typical
really
classic with
worn down.
so classic with patients with chronic illness because you are so motivated to get better. You will try anything
Oh
until the
yeah.
next thing fails. And then the next thing fails again. And every time you build up this courage that I'm going to work harder, I'm not going to give up this new thing that's come out, or this new supplement, or this new technique until it fails again. And it's absolutely disheartening. And especially in this
Oh,
case, because
devastating.
I had told you that these patches have been
Devastating.
miracles for my patients, for myself. And so I wasn't just trying to sell you patches. I was in the same situation that you were. And in
Yeah.
my way of helping, that I'm just trust me on this, right? But I mean, there was a point and it didn't work. And we said, let's stop, and you said I think you had given up. You even got out of the Facebook group and things like that, and you were completely done with the patches. And
Like,
every
I'm
so
not good
often
enough.
you're
I
like,
can't
I'm
pass.
done
I'm
with
not
this. And
good enough to
I
be
don't
here.
blame you. I absolutely don't blame you. And then I would just check in on you periodically. And I checked in on you a month later, I think sometime in March. And then I checked in on you again, maybe in end of March, just to see how you were doing. Like, I was worried about you because you were really,
Yeah,
really
because
sick.
I was continuing to get worse.
You were continuing to get worse and things were
Yeah.
getting worse for you. And I kept
Yeah.
checking in. And then finally, around April, I mustered up some courage and I messaged you again because you were not doing well. And I cannot remember, I have the series of messages, but there's something specifically that you had said that I keep reacting. My body's not accepting anything. And that's when I mustered up the courage and I said, you know what? You've tried everything. Can I just send you the 3 patches that are involved fully in the HPA protocol for vagus nerve? Now, I know we had failed with just the one patch, but as I
Yeah.
kept thinking about your case more and more and relating it to how I had healed myself and what had worked for me, I thought, you know what? Yes, she's reacting to that one specific patch, but what if we put the 3 together and actually do the whole vagus nerve protocol? And I know you had spent money. I know you had bought the patches. I know you were
Mhm.
completely devastated and thought the patches were not going to work. And so I said, let me send them to you. I'll just send you a few samples of the 3 patches to do the whole protocol together, which was really a risk in your case because you are the kind of person that is sensitive to everything. So here we're
Mhm.
taking a huge gamble because now we're going to do not
Yeah.
1, but 3 patches now all together.
No,
And it took
I
me
was
over a week
scared
or
too.
you were scared, I was scared, and it took me over a week to mail them to you because I had a bunch of travel and we had a move going on in our own lives, and it took me a little bit of time to send them to you. So I sent them to you. And so tell us what happened. You got the patches
So I
and
got
you
the
said you were going to
patches
start
and
the protocol.
I put them, I think SP6
Mhm.
goes here, and then Silent Night goes here, and then Aeon
Yes,
goes back of the neck.
in the back of the neck.
5 minutes, and then I took them off, didn't feel any different, and then within a few hours, oh my gosh, I started shaking. Oh, and I felt, I have to say, I did not feel good. It was a
Yes.
rough night, really rough night, and a rough day. My legs were, the neuropathy kicked up 1,000%. It was rough. And then the next day after that was my birthday. And we're traveling from my Virginia home back to our cabin in West Virginia. And I woke up and I was like, well, I feel great. My legs don't hurt nearly as bad. What the heck? My mood was outstanding. It was like a little granule where I felt like Anne again. I felt like myself. And I kept telling, I was like, Dave, I feel good today. I feel really good. And he was like, it's your birthday. You should feel good. So we drove home and I was singing in the car. We always listen to 70s on 7 when we're driving. and we were singing, having a good time. We stopped at a knitting store. I bopped in a little bit. I was like, what the heck is going on with me? And so from that point on, mm, so I will be damned. I'm using these patches. Something happened to me.
Yep.
And I knew it was the patches, and I knew something miraculous had happened in my body. I knew it. And then from that day, I was like, I'll do it again for 5 minutes. And then I did it for 10 minutes. And I think by the end of the week, I was doing the HPA axis for 12 hours.
For 12 hours. And so
I had I moved SB6 to, it's right next to the belly button. And then some at night I put on my foot. So I moved them down a little bit.
Right.
To different locations, and that seemed to help. And I did it. I did it for 12 hours. I couldn't believe it. And I was feeling better and better. I couldn't believe it. And then I was like, I'm gonna order me some patches. And I went crazy.
So I will just intervene here and tell you. So on April 28th, it's funny you bring up this story because these are the two sets of messages I also saved. On April 28th, when you tried the HPA for five minutes, and you said, yesterday I tried doing 5 minutes with the HPA Access protocol, and within hours I began getting really sick. I was unable to eat dinner because my stomach was cramping, and I had this awful aching metallic feeling all over. By the time I went to bed, I was having adrenal rushes, peeing gallons every few minutes. I finally fell asleep and woke up not being able to walk unassisted. I'm literally hysterical because tomorrow is my 54th birthday, and I feel defeated, despondent, hopeless than ever. I appreciate your efforts. I wish these patches help me, but I just don't think they work for everyone. And the very next day, you felt like you literally messaged me that morning, early in the morning, and said, just wanted to let you know, April 29th, I'm having a little miracle today. After experiencing such immense detox, I woke up today to feeling better than I have in a very long time. My pain is reduced, my mood is great, and I do not feel physically drained. I have not been on a true walk in almost a year, and this morning was the first morning in many moons that I felt that I could get out and walk a mile with my dog. This is after 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
HPA and calming down your vagus nerve. And if anyone who follows me, you know I have talked about this for years with chronic illness patients. That is the root of my treatment that I use with my patients, is to calm down the vagus nerve and to really calm down the HPA axis. And I've made many videos on this before because it's the HPA axis that continues stimulating the adrenals. And so even though you are done with that tiger, you're done with that phase of your life of danger, the HPA axis is in a, like if you figure out the CD or the disc that is kind of stuck and going in a loop, it's stuck in that loop. And so it continues to fire to your adrenals. And that's what makes you sick. And you said, nonetheless, something remarkable has happened. I think I'm now convinced in the patches that could really help me. Before I was doubtful. And so you said,
you laid down. It was like, oh.
yes. And you said, I'm going to do my best to build up so I can tolerate. And so I just, when I have such sick patients, I tell them, because I'm not just teaching you from a textbook, this is a real life personal experience, not only mine, but everyone else's. All my other patients, we get to calm down that HPA vagus nerve, and you literally start feeling like a different person. It's basically like overstimulating your adrenals for 10, 12 years, and then overnight it stops. And you wake up going, wait, why am I feeling so different today? Why am I feeling different? And since then, it's been a trajectory for you. I almost cried last week when you sent me a message. I almost cried the week before because your messages are just, I literally said to you last week, I think someone's taken over your account. Like, I'm not talking to the same person. You are walking miles every day. This is April 29th, and today we are on July. So within a time span of less than 2 months, 3 months, you are walking, you are strength training every day. Tell us about that.
Not every day. Well, I walk every other day, and I walk about 25, 30 minutes. And then, like, when I say strength training, I'm not doing like a major, like, video for 20 minutes, but I guess being an exercise junkie, I know what to do. So I'm
Correct.
doing, like when I put something in the microwave and heating it up for 3 or 4 minutes, I'll do squats or squat with a toe tap or,
Right.
moves like that. Standing crunches and things like that, where you lean over.
Right.
Or when I'm knitting for extended period, I'll get up and I'll do, some lady push-ups, or I'll get my barbells and, do a 5-minute arm. I like to just doing those little bits of strength training. It makes your body feel amazing. And it's not
Right.
too taxing right now to just do a
Sure.
5-minute chunk or a 3-minute chunk here and there, and then have my walks every other day. I still, I've had some mini crashes. They have not been nearly anything
Yep.
like what I was doing. And I was having crashes, oh gosh, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. And I never even knew what was causing it. Whereas now I'm kind of like, oh, well, I probably overdid it with the walk, or,
Right.
this past week, I went out and did a 30-minute walk. And, we live in West Virginia. It is not a piddle paddle walk. We got hills,
Yeah. Yeah. You're doing
And
some
so I
strenuous
walk
hikes.
out in the meadow and it's uneven. It's more like a trudge. And then I came back in, I worked in my garden and planted flowers. I was out for hours.
Right. Right.
And then did vacuuming and cleaning. And I'm like, and
Right.
but then I'll have a few days where I'm like, oh, I just don't have the energy for that. So, but
Right.
as time goes on, I
Right.
think I'm just going to keep.
And that's what I was going to ask you next too, is as far as, the exercise portion is great, but functionally, you've been going back and forth between, I think, the West Coast and the East Coast. You traveled quite a bit, and then or was it Washington to West
No,
Virginia?
West Virginia to Virginia. So it's just
To
a
Virginia.
5 hour
Okay.
drive, but it's a
Okay.
trek.
Yeah. And then
And
you've been gardening, you've traveled back and forth, you've celebrated anniversaries, gone out to dinner.
went out to dinner. I had not eaten in a restaurant in over 7 years.
Right. And
Yeah.
nothing else has changed in what you were doing except the patches. You have
Yeah. I
stayed
mean,
consistent.
I do take very good care of myself. I'm gluten free. I'm sugar free. I eat 85, 90% clean.
Yep.
I have to say, if there is one perk to this journey, is that I have learned so much about health, nutrition, wellness. I would never go back to being the person
Sure.
that I was, where I would go, even though I was running 35 miles a week, I was eating protein bars and,
Right.
pizzas, and it just really,
Right. But you've been taking care of yourself and eating well for a while now.
yeah.
It's
And
not just the last 6 months. So the only variable for you in the last 6 months has really been the patches.
the patch.
Um, the
Mhm.
patches, right? And so if I told you 6 months ago when you had first reached out that 6 months from now, this is what you would be doing: gardening, driving back and forth, going to the hangar, celebrating anniversaries, getting ready for a grandchild coming along the way, would you have believed me?
No,
No.
no,
No.
no, 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 no. And
Yeah.
neuropathy is healing.
Yeah.
It's still there, but it's healing.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah, major changes. And I'm having fun with
Especially
the patches. And that's,
right.
I'm trying different protocols and enjoying the group, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
really is.
and I think I've mentioned to you before, I've told a lot of my listeners on my channel too, that they have been a game changer for me. My family and I have not needed to take any over-the-counter medications for over a year and a half, 2 years. I'm not against it. We just don't need to. We were in Boston over the weekend, moving one son in and moving one son out and things like that. And we went to this park there, and they had these really fast slides, and my daughter fell and really bumped her tailbone pretty hard. And
Oh,
this week she had a very intense basketball camp, and I patched her that night because I always carry the patches with me. I patched her that night, and then Monday morning before she went to camp, patched her another set of patches, and she hasn't needed to take anything. She hasn't even needed to ice, or like if my kids have high fevers or any kind of cold or sore throat or whatever, I just patch them, and within 24 hours it's they're not miracle patches. I'm not sitting here touting this, something that's just, they help your body's own ability to heal itself. So when they have a cold or a sore throat, I'm patching them to boost their immune system. Or like in this case, when she fell and really bumped her tailbone hard, then I just patched her to help with inflammation. I mean, the same thing that you'd be taking, a Motrin or a Tylenol or whatever, I'm just helping the body naturally help heal itself. And so that's where these
Exactly.
patches come in. When we did the HPA vagus nerve protocol for you, we just helped your HPA axis calm down. We just helped it not be in overdrive, and everything else then settles down. And then the rest you have to do to take care of yourself. You have to build your bone mass back. You have to, fix your GI system or your gut by eating healthy and
Yeah.
probiotic and fermented foods and things like that. I don't claim for it to be a cure by any means for do all be all. My husband sprained his ankle really badly just about four or 5 weeks ago, and he literally like hobbled home with this huge ankle. And I patched him. He had to go to work, and I patched him. And within 24 hours, even he himself was shocked. He had absolutely no swelling. So, stuff like that. I'm not sitting there taking away the injury, but I'm just helping the body calm that inflammation down, help that tendon heal, and that's it. So, thank you so much for letting us share your story today, because when I met you and when we started talking, I was on a mission. You reminded me of myself so much that I knew that if I could help myself, then I could help you. And
Oh,
your story was so similar to all the rest of the patients that I see in the last few years. And so it just tells me more and more how these kind of patients, these kind of chronic illnesses that nobody has answers for, can be helped. Your body is a wonderful tool. Your body can heal itself. It absolutely can heal itself if you give it the right tools.
mhm. Well, you're definitely one of the angels that appeared along, during this journey. I have a few more that encouraged me to get to the hospital and get that
Mm,
feeding tube in, and I am very indebted to them. And then I just feel completely indebted to you for continuing to have faith in me, because I
yes,
was
awesome.
really, really, really broken. I mean, I just couldn't envision things turning around. I just couldn't see it. And now, even though I would say I'm about 80, 85%, I can see it now. I
Right.
can see it because I've witnessed so much healing the past few months. And
Right.
that's
Oh,
having hope is a beautiful thing.
having hope is a beautiful thing. And I told you before we started the interview too, that one of the main reasons I wanted to get your story out is I wanted people to have this hope. Whatever it is that you're using to heal yourself, don't give up. You could be using anything. In this case, we used patches, and we kind of worked together to do that, but you could be doing any other treatment. But don't give up, because there is an end point where you will heal if you're consistent enough and disciplined enough, and you give your body the right tools to heal itself. You absolutely can heal. So thank you so much, Annie. This
Thank
has
you.
been a wonderful journey. And I mean, literally now I just see you just soar. You're patching all kinds of things and
I
patching
know.
all sorts of, symptoms and things like that. So this is so great to see you just kind of flourish now. And I really, really appreciate you. And good luck with now becoming a grandmother. I mean,
I
this is
know. It's
next most
crazy.
exciting phase. You're going to need a lot of energy in this case.
Oh, I
So.
know. I know.
Yes, and your heart is going to be bursting with so much more love and more dopamine and more serotonin, and
I
you'll
know.
be really good.
I
So
know.
thank
The
you so
sweet
much.
pickle is going to be spoiled, spoiled, spoiled.
Yes. So, well, thank you, Annie, again, and we will be
Take
in touch.
care and thank you. I'm honored.
Thanks.
Bye.